The Capitol dome stood proud, its white marble catching the pale sun of a new Washington morning. But inside, beneath its silent, watchful gaze, the air was anything but calm. It rippled with the kind of static tension that precedes a lightning strike, the unspoken pressure of decades of political warfare. Before we plunge into the heart of this storm, if this story of courage, conviction, and a young woman unafraid to speak truth to power resonates with you, do us a favor. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of this incredible fight. And as you watch, let us know in the comments what you think about what's happening in Washington. Is this the kind of fire we need? Now, back to the halls of power, where that tension was about to break. In a quiet antechamber, Karoline Levit adjusted the cuff of her navy blazer. At 28, she was no seasoned veteran of Washington's endless skirmishes. She was a political press secretary, a comms expert for a world that ran on viral moments and social media wars. But today, she was about to step into her first major televised House oversight hearing. And she wasn't just bringing talking points. She was bringing a fight. Beneath her lapel, her trademarked silver cross glinted, a silent promise of conviction in a city that had long forgotten it. She carried herself with a poise that was both graceful and dangerous, a calm that hinted at an inner fire ready to ignite. Across the room, separated by a sea of aides, journalists, and interns, stood the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. Decades older, a master of political chess, he watched the room with a calm, calculated gaze. He was a pillar of the establishment, an orator whose words were as smooth as polished marble. He'd faced down senators, governors, and billionaires. He saw the political game as a series of calculated moves and patient waiting. He saw Karoline as a pawn, an ambitious young woman who would try to make a scene and then fade. But Karoline wasn't playing chess. She wasn't here for a political game. She was here for a battle, and she'd come to fight with fire. The hearing room buzzed with an electric energy. The cameras were perfectly aligned, lenses ready to capture every shift in expression, every tense moment. The official topic was public trust in federal institutions, a safe headline designed to mask a deeper ideological minefield. It was a subject Jeffries was confident he could navigate with ease, but Karoline had other plans. She'd studied his recent floor speeches, noticed a pattern of subtle jabs at conservative women, soft attacks barbed through civility. She wasn't just prepared with her facts. She was prepared to shatter his script. She was ready to turn the hearing from a discussion into a confrontation, a duel between an old guard and a new fire. She leaned into her mic, calm and composed. The gavel fell, and the match began.
The chairman's gavel echoed a final, sharp thud, and a hush fell over the room. Karoline Levit leaned into her microphone, her posture a study in controlled defiance. The air, once thick with tension, now hung heavy with anticipation. She looked not at the committee, but at the main camera lens, a direct line to the millions watching at home. "Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity," she began, her voice steady and clear. "But let's be clear. Americans aren't just losing trust in institutions. They're losing trust in those who use them as weapons." A ripple of sharp murmurs cut through the room. Jeffries, across the aisle, narrowed his eyes. The subtle jab was heard, and for the first time his practiced calm showed a flicker of real attention. He didn't speak yet. He was listening now. Karoline continued, weaving her facts with a piercing cadence. She spoke not like a politician reciting tired talking points, but like a prosecutor, laying out a case for a jury. Her audience wasn't just the committee, it was the millions watching online, the very people the establishment had seemingly forgotten. Her words hit with a surgical rhythm. Double standards, censorship disguised as safety, investigations that target belief instead of crime. "That's why the people watching us today don't buy the game anymore," she declared, her gaze unwavering. Jeffries shifted in his seat, the subtle movement a tell of his rising discomfort. He whispered to an aide, then pressed the button to respond. His tone was smooth, almost mocking, the casual dismissal of a master to an apprentice. "Young lady," he began with a hint of theatrical patience. "Perhaps before accusing institutions, you should learn how they actually work." The room tensed, the air thickened, a palpable gasp from the gallery. But Karoline's reaction wasn't what he expected. She didn't flinch. Instead, a slow, knowing smile crept onto her face. Not sweet, but like someone who had lured a wolf into a trap. That spark had just hit dry grass. Jeffries had stepped exactly where she wanted him. She leaned forward, her voice dropping just enough to command absolute silence. "I understand how institutions work, Congressman Jeffries," she said, her tone steady but cold. "But I just don't believe they should be run like private clubs for elites who look down on everyone outside their circles." The low "oh" that rippled through the crowd of aides and press was a collective recognition of the shot fired. Jeffries' practiced calm cracked, his eyebrow raised, his face a mask of slight disbelief. "Ms. Levit," he said, his tone shifting from condescending to defensive, "I suggest you choose your words carefully. This committee has rules of decorum." And in a flash she shot back, "And I suggest you choose your targets more carefully, because I'm not one of your interns, and I won't sit quietly while you talk down to me for being young, conservative, or unapologetically bold." The gavel banged, but it was too late. The moment, raw, real, and unfiltered, had broken free, already spilling into social media like wildfire. The hashtag #LevitTisJeffries was born, and the political world would never be the same.
The gavel may have fallen, but the noise was only just beginning. Outside the hearing room, the air was electric, thick with the buzz of a media frenzy. Clips in the exchange, Jeffries' condescending "young lady," Karoline's icy retort about private clubs, her unwavering gaze as he tried to lecture her on decorum, had already spilled onto social media like wildfire. Within minutes, the hashtag #LevitTisJeffries was trending on X. Clips from the live stream were spreading across conservative and centrist accounts, while liberal voices rushed to downplay the moment, mocking her rhetoric and questioning her qualifications. The one thing none of them could do, however, was ignore her. In the hallway, reporters jostled for position. Karoline, gathering her papers with a quiet composure that belied the storm she had just unleashed, slipped her phone from her bag. 3 texts from Trump's team, 2 missed calls from Fox. She exhaled quietly, a small, private moment of victory before stepping back into the public eye. Inside, Jeffries sat silently for the next speaker, his jaw tight. He hadn't expected fire, and now it was spreading. That night, the atmosphere in Jeffries' office was colder than the marble halls outside. He stood at the window, arms crossed, while his chief of staff paced behind him. "She didn't just push back," the aide muttered, scrolling through the furious activity on their phones. "She flipped the script, and social media is eating it up." Jeffries turned slowly. "I underestimated her. She's not just parroting talking points, she's got teeth." He picked up his phone and typed out a tweet, a calculated move to reframe the narrative. "Disrespect isn't strength. Volume isn't substance. We need real solutions, not viral sound bites." He hit send, but the counterfire was immediate, getting roasted by conservatives and quote-tweeted by Karoline's supporters. Meanwhile, in her own office, Karoline and her aide Jonah watched the chaos unfold. Jonah handed her his phone, showing her the tweet. "You want to respond?" Karoline read the tweet, a grin spreading across her face. "No, not online. I'll answer him on air tonight." Later that evening, under the bright studio lights of a prime-time Fox News show, she did exactly that. What happened today wasn't just a clash of ideologies. It was a warning shot. This generation isn't waiting to be invited to the table. We're building a new one. The moment, of course, went viral, and more texts poured in from every corner of the political world. Jeffries, watching the replay from his home, his jaw clenched, knew this wasn't over. 2 days later, his team's next move arrived in Karoline's inbox, an email inviting her to a surprise roundtable hosted by the House Ethics Panel, moderated by CNN's Dana Bash.
The topic was civic discourse in a divided America, a neutral headline that was to Karoline a transparent setup. The location was the Capitol Media Auditorium. Jeffries would be there. Jonah raised an eyebrow. "You gonna turn it down?" Karoline leaned back in her chair, a fire in her eyes. "Why would I? They want a trap? I'll give 'em a firestorm."
The night of the round table, the Capitol Media Auditorium buzzed with the low hum of anticipation. Journalists, influencers, Hill staffers, they all packed in, sensing something bigger than a policy debate was about to unfold. This wasn't just another panel, it was a showdown. Karoline arrived in a navy blazer, her signature silver cross pinned firmly. She shook no hands. She didn't smile. She sat quietly confident, her eyes sharp, her presence a silent challenge. Jeffries entered to polite applause, but it was noted by every journalist in the room that Karoline's entrance moments earlier had been louder. Dana Bash began, her voice smooth and professional. "Tonight, we ask, has political discourse lost its way? And is the next generation healing that divide or deepening it?" Jeffries, polished and ready, gave a practiced smile. "The divide," he began, "grows when we elevate confrontation over cooperation, when figures seek fame instead of public service." It was a clear, direct attack on Karoline, delivered with the smooth condescension of a man who thought he had the high ground. Karoline didn't miss a beat. She leaned forward, her voice soft but cutting through the noise. "If accountability looks like confrontation to you, maybe you've never really faced either." A ripple moved through the room. Dana Bash raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in her expression. "Congressman Jeffries, what's your response?" Jeffries' jaw tensed. His measured reply about decorum and experience felt tight, defensive. The practiced veneer was cracking under her unwavering gaze. Karoline countered with a new weapon. No more viral soundbites. She used statistics, shared stories from Middle America, and made sharp legal references. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't smile. She simply dissected his arguments with the precision of a surgeon. The crowd, initially skeptical, was captivated. By the end of the panel, the energy had completely flipped. Even some moderate pundits looked surprised. The internet, of course, was already on fire again. Hashtags Karoline clashes back, hashtag Jeffries cornered, and hashtag cross moment all trended. In a back hallway, a staffer turned to Jeffries, his face pale. "She made you look old school." Jeffries didn't answer. He just walked faster. By morning, the clip of Karoline's line had 3.4 million views. It was being stitched into TikToks, quoted on X, and referenced by morning anchors. CNN's headline read, "Levit shakes up the chamber, a new voice or dangerous rhetoric." Fox News ran with, "Karoline goes scorched earth on Jeffries and wins." But Karoline didn't flinch at either. In her office, she watched a slowed-down clip of Jeffries' eyes twitching when she spoke. That tiny moment, the tell of discomfort, was all she needed. Jonah walked in holding 2 phones. "You've got NBC calling, and Trump's comms team wants you to keynote at the Freedom Forum next week." She looked at him, unbothered. She said, "Line up the appearances. I'm not done yet." The fire she had sparked was now a full-blown inferno, and she was poised to spread it far beyond the walls of Washington. The rally tent in Manchester, New Hampshire looked like something out of a campaign finale, even though it was just July. Red, white, and very loud, with signs reading "Karoline equals courage" and "Jeffries can't debate her, so he hides." Karoline stood behind the curtain, calm in her fitted blazer, and the signature cross necklace glinting beneath the lights. The crowd outside was electric, thousands having shown up not just for the headliner, but for her. Trump, grinning backstage, turned to her. "When I said fire the cannons, I didn't expect you to torch half the establishment." She smirked. "Only the flammable parts." The announcer's voice boomed. "Please welcome the woman who asked the questions no one else dared, Karoline Levit." The applause hit like a thunderclap. She stepped into the light, her voice steady and clear. She didn't mention Jeffries by name at first. She didn't have to. The crowd knew. But when she got to it, she didn't hold back. Last week, I spoke up in a congressional chamber, and a man who claims to stand for the people couldn't even respond, not because he didn't hear me, but because he couldn't afford to answer. The cheers built like a wave. They call it progress when they silence your questions. They call it unity when they ignore your values. But we call it what it is: cowardice dressed up in sound bites. Back in Washington, Jeffries watched from his home, his jaw clenched. This wasn't just a political moment, it was a movement. The next day in the House chamber, the air was tighter than usual. Jeffries, there for a debate on education, saw her seated behind the committee, just observing, but her presence was louder than any speech. He paused, and in that hesitation, she knew she'd gotten into his head. But her final move was yet to come. Later that session, she stepped up to the mic herself, not as a congresswoman, but as a comms expert. The room wasn't hostile, it was tense, as if Washington itself was holding its breath. "This floor was built for disagreement," she began, her voice measured. But somewhere along the way, this chamber forgot that disagreement isn't disrespect, that asking questions isn't rebellion, that defending your values isn't extremism. She turned briefly toward Jeffries' row, her voice dropping but rising in conviction. "You said I brought heat over reason, but fire is reason when the room's gone cold." The chamber was silent, stunned. "I'm not here to be liked. I'm here because this country still belongs to those who don't blink when power stares back." Applause erupted from her side. Even Jeffries exhaled, the kind of breath you only let out when you've been hit harder than expected. That day, the chamber belonged to her. What began as a confrontation became something far greater. It became a statement. A young voice, unapologetically firm in conviction, stood face to face with one of Washington's most seasoned figures and didn't flinch. Karoline Levit didn't just challenge Hakeem Jeffries with words, she brought a fire rooted in principle. She asked questions no one dared to ask because silence had ruled for too long. This wasn't about partisanship, it was about courage. It was about a young woman reminding America that conviction isn't something to hide. It's something to sharpen.